Well, it's 10 o'clock, so we will call the December 14th, 2023 meeting of the Oklahoma City Employee Retirement System to order. Item number 2 on our agenda this morning is to approve the minutes of the meeting of November 9th, 2023. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item number 3 is the consent docket. We have 2 items. I've got a question on B. Approve sending attendee to GFOA. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the ones that have attachments. I'm sorry. Regina, can you give us a little bit of information on B, please?
Sure. It was just full transparency. I was named to a committee on retirement with GFOA, and there are in-person meeting requirements. So I know I'm on my way out, but I just wanted to ask permission before I incur travel expenses for the board.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on item B or any of the other items on the consent docket? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item number 4 is to ratify approvals. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item number 5 is to approve the claims docket. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item number 6 is to approve the following applications for service retirement. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item number, I guess it is item number 7, I'm sorry. Approve continuation to spouse. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item number 8 is to receive report of death, authorize payment of the $5,000 death benefit, and authorize secretary to make necessary changes to conform on the following. Have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item 9 is to receive report of death, authorize secretary to make necessary changes to conform on the following. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item number 10 is items for individual consideration. Item number 10A is amendment number 5 with Davis, Graham, and Stubbs, LLP, for professional legal services for the period of January 1, 2024 through December 31, 2024. Estimated cost $35,000 per year. Anyone have any questions on that?
Is that about the same as it was?
Let's get the answer.
Our costs have come down this fiscal year, so I kept it at the same budgeted amount just in case.
Okay.
Yeah, it is the same estimated cost, but we had higher legal fees 2 years ago due to the FAE correction and secure and other things, so we're hoping that that's a fair estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion on item 10A. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item 10B is contract for medical examinations and evaluations for applicants for disability retirements with Independent Medical Examinations, LLC, January 1st through December 31st, 2025. So this is a 2-year contract.
I do want to say the specific doctor is not named in this contract, but the doctor that has been used for years and years is retiring. And so another doctor in his practice is taking over those services. So our fee structure changed from $200 an hour, not to exceed 3 hours, to $850 per visit. So I just wanted to disclose that.
Yeah.
We have very few of these, as you know, that come before the board.
Any questions on item 10B? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Item number 11 is to receive the investment consultant report. Patty, you're up.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So we have a good report to give today and even better news to provide through the end of yesterday. But on the first page, or actually page 3 of our report, we just provide some background information on some more macro environment type of information on the overall markets through the end of November. And growth has been positive, unemployment has been low, labor markets have been strong, and most importantly, the Fed has decided to maintain or keep rates stable or the same. So the Fed met in February, and then the Fed met yesterday, and after releasing the news that they were going to maintain the rates, markets have reacted very, very favorably. So really, since the end of October, market news has been generally positive, and we've seen a rebound in the markets in November, and then continued to see that rebound through December. Really, within the bond market, we've seen a big swing. So bond rates have come down significantly. So the 10-year Treasury it had peaked at 5% in October, and then it came down to around 4.3, so about a 70 basis point drop in November, and then through the end of yesterday, it's come down about another 35 basis points. So this morning, it was right around 5% or 4%. And so you've seen a 100 basis point change in bonds. And you have to remember, when bond rates decline, the value of the bonds go up. So when we look at positive results for the bond managers, and then also all of this news has been very positive for the overall equity markets as well. And so equities and bonds have performed on a year-to-date basis very strong. If you go to page 4, we kind of provide some history, and what you'll see here is that while year-to-date results are strong, it has been kind of a bumpy ride along the way. And so this is just a chart of the S&P 500. So that line going through represents the S&P 500 index. It's large cap stocks, large cap U.S. stocks, so some of the largest companies in the United States, and it goes back to 2017 and goes out through November of this year. And you'll see that, we started low, and just from a very broad general comment is that, we have come a long way since the end of 2017. But if you look back to kind of April, where it says April of 2020, that was right after COVID. So after the whole world had essentially shut down, markets dropped significantly, and that's where the S&P 500 was at that point in time. And then you can see that it kind of peaked at the beginning of 2022, or at the end of, December 31st, 2021, markets peaked. And then last year, 2022, was one of the worst performing years for the bond market in history, and then global equities were down as well. And so you see the decline of the S&P 500, although it wasn't a straight line, a lot of bumps along the way, a lot of peaks and valleys there. And then kind of looking out further to the right, that's where we are as of November 30th, 2023. And we're almost to the peak of where we were at the beginning of January of 2022. And if you looked at this chart, as we'll continue to update it, but depending on where markets end in December, if you look at it, through the end of yesterday, we're going to be much closer to that peak, about 2% off from the S&P 500 high. So, it's just really an illustration and points out the fact that it's so important to stay invested in the markets, that while there will be points in time when the market's down, on an overall, markets generally trend upward. It's just not always a smooth or a straight line. There's a lot of peaks and valleys along the way. On the following page, on page 5, we show the results of the broad indices for the month of November and year-to-date. And a couple things to note is that overall, all equity markets, had very strong performance in the month of November, up anywhere from 8 to 9% for the month of November. Large cap stocks, which is all the way to the far left, represented by the S&P 500, was up 9.1%. Non-U.S. stocks, the non-U.S. developed, up 9.3%. Emerging markets up 8%, so emerging markets have struggled, so they rebounded a bit. And then U.S. small caps also rebounded, up 9% in the month of November. And then U.S. core fixed income, you'll see up 4.5% for the month of November. This was the best month for bonds since 1985, so strong performance. And then as we look through it through the end of December, the aggregate bond index is up another 2.5% and is now up almost 4.2% on a year-to-date basis. So really strong results in the bond market. And then looking at small cap stocks, you see, small cap stocks are up 9%, 9% in the month of November. They're up another 7% in the month of December, bringing the year-to-date return to 12.2. So small cap stocks have really benefited from the news that the interest rates kind of stabilized, no more increases, and there's also talks about potentially cutting to 2024. So small cap stocks have really rebounded. One of the other big trends in the markets right now too is the dispersion between growth and value. So the Magnificent Seven, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, NVIDIA, Tesla, these stocks are leading the way. And we have another chart in here just to kind of show you how much impact they've had on the S&P 500. But also, it's really led to a huge dispersion between growth-oriented stocks and value-oriented stocks. The Russell 1000 Growth Index through the end of yesterday is up 40% year-to-date, and the Russell 1000 Value is up 10%. So we have a 30% dispersion between the value and the growth stocks, and it's really being led by the technology sector and these Magnificent Seven stocks. On the following page, on page 6, here, this chart on the left, you see the S&P 500. This is the S&P 500 index. It also tracks the S&P 500, just this Magnificent Seven. So the green bar on the left-hand side represents these 7 stocks, and you can see much higher than the other indices. The blue bar represents the S&P 500 index, and so you can see, you can see how much the Magnificent Seven has really led the performance of the S&P 500. But then also, if you look at the S&P 500 equal weighted index, that's represented by the light blue bar. So that's if every stock in the S&P 500 was equally weighted. So right now, depending on its size or its growth, these Magnificent Seven make up a larger percentage of the index. So it's having a larger impact on the S&P 500 index. But if you equally weighted every stock in the S&P 500 index, you'd see that's where your results would be much lower than where we are with the S&P 500, and it's because these tech stocks have had such a significant impact. And then also, the other thing to note too is while these stocks have led the market through the end of November, the breadth or the results have broadened more so. So there's more stocks in the S&P 500 that contributed to the return in November than we've seen previously or in prior months throughout the year. Looking at your portfolio, if you go to page 8, you'll see your portfolio is valued at $830 million at the end of November. You have a target of 65% to equities, 20% to fixed income, and 15% to real assets. Everything is pretty much in line with the targets. I will note that the large cap piece of the portfolio was implemented between two managers previously. So you had the S&P 500 index fund managed by State Street, as well as Intech managed a piece of the large cap portfolio. It was split evenly. Those assets were transitioned into the SSGA S&P 500 index fund in the month of November. And so when you look at the following page, you'll see there's just a residual or actually it's on page 10, just a residual market value of $116,000. That's just cash, some residual cash from income payments that have come in. But all those assets have been transitioned into the SSGA S&P 500 fund, and it was done primarily in kind. Just going back to page 9, when you look at the total portfolio results, you'll see year-to-date strong results on an absolute basis, up 7.2% or 6.8 on a net of fee basis, lagging the policy index a bit, which is up 8.7%. So the policy index represents, it's more passive if you were invested, just in the indexes, in index funds, that's what your return would be. So you guys have a much more diversified portfolio. One of the reasons for the underperformance on a year-to-date basis can be contributed to private equity. So private equity is being benchmarked to the S&P 500 index in that policy index, but yet private equity is on a year-to-date basis up 6%. So while the S&P 500 is up 20.8%. So you're getting a bit of a drag and a pull on the, on the total portfolio versus the policy index there. But I do want to point out, long-term, private equity is a long-term investment. And when you look at the results over a long-term time horizon, private equity has been a very strong contributor to the overall portfolio and was the best performing asset class last year in 2022 when equity markets were going down. You'll see on here private equity 3-year return 16.8 and 5 years 15.1 and 15.4. So just over the more recent time period, really on a year-to-date basis, private equity has pretty much been flat to slightly positive. And when you compare that and put that in the policy index, it's a bit of a drag. Looking at, large caps, your large cap portfolio is up almost 20% on a year-to-date basis. Small cap up 2%. I will say Silvercrest had a very strong month in the month of November. So prior to that, probably one of the newest managers you have in the portfolio, funded late last year. It struggled a bit to get off, but long-term performance is strong, and they had a very strong month in the month of November. International developed up 10.8% versus the EFA index at 12.2. So one of your managers in the non-U.S. portfolio orientation or value bias, and so it's lagged a bit year to date. And then emerging markets up 7.7% versus the EM index at 5.7. Wasatch also had a very strong month. Wasatch is small cap emerging market oriented stocks, and they also had a strong month. And then fixed income up 2.7% versus the aggregate index up 1.6%. When you look at your individual managers, you have a very broadly diversified portfolio. You have SSGA, WAMCO, PGIM, and Brandywine. Brandywine also very strong month for the month of November. And then your core-oriented managers, SSGA and WAMCO, had very strong months. As rates came down, the value of the securities in the portfolio went up, and they had very strong months as well. And then lastly, you have cash, which was always useless to talk about because we weren't earning anything on cash. But now, you can see over the 1-year period getting about 5% on any cash balances, which is always good to see. Any questions on the portfolio or any of the managers? Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to accept the monthly investment report. I have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. Okay, the next item, item number 12, is to elect a chair for the term of January 1, 2024 to December 31, 2024.
I'd like to nominate Paul Bronson as chairman.
We have one nomination on the horseshoe. Any others? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion. Have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved. How about that? Thank you. Item number 13 is to elect the vice chair for the term of January 1 through December 31, 2024.
I'd like to nominate Ken Culver as vice chairman.
We have one nomination. Any others? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion. A motion and a second. Please record your vote. Item is approved.
Don't miss any meetings.
Gotcha. Okay, item number 14 is comments from board, staff, and citizens. Just want to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Regina reminded me to remind you that our January meeting will be held in the city clerk's conference room on the second floor, correct? So, any other comments from the board? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned at 10:23. Thank you, everyone.